What's up, y'all? This is Third Floor Sounds Foundations, and we're here with
DJ Spinna, live at the SpinnaVerse.
Let's speak to your early musical environment. What was it like in your household? Were you listening to music often? Tell us about your introduction to music in general.
Wow, so my introduction to music in my household, growing up in Brooklyn, Crown Heights section, was very humbling. Very modest collection for my dad. I started playing records as early as 2 years old.
Okay, scratching and everything.
Not even scratching, because that wasn't a thing yet.
True.
This was like early 70s. I'm a 70s baby. And the music in my house was quite eclectic, definitely rooted in soul, but also Latin American music. It's my parents are from Panama.
Okay.
So a lot of Latin American music, Caribbean music, reggae, soca, even Haitian music, compa, but a lot of soul, a lot of funk as well, Motown, Aretha Franklin, James Brown, stuff like that. A few years later, when I'm able to walk and talk, disco came into the foray of the vinyl arsenal, the modest one in my home. So that extended also to my uncle's collection, my father's younger brother, who had even more records, a little bit more extensive. And I would be the one playing a lot of the family gatherings, playing records as a kid for the family gatherings out of his collection. And then, once I started getting into DJing, I know we'll touch on that, but a lot of that, the beginnings came from pairing my father's records with my uncle's records to have two copies and what have you. But those two collections are the foundation.
And where did they get their collections from? Did they ever tell you about, did they inherit them? Were they out shopping? Were they clubbing? How did they introduce you to that?
No, this was during a time where, records were just found in the home, and, most people who listen to music, vinyl was the format, and they were buying records. They were just going to their local record stores and buying whatever they heard on the radio or whatever the record stores would sell them. But a lot of this music from back then I can say it was really based on community and just part of the surroundings.
And I guess before you became the dedicated aux person or record person, was there a particular record or moment that made you feel oh, I want to be the music guy. I want to be the one controlling the music in the home or at the parties?
I can't say there was a specific moment. I think my love for this music thing and records, and it all just happened organically. Just really raised on it, and it just became part of who I am organically. I can't say that there are certain records that I loved, that I played often.
Yeah.
Songs like Get on the Good Foot by James Brown was a favorite as a kid. There's a soul record by Undisputed Truth. They were a Motown group called Smiling Faces Sometimes. I played that a lot as a kid. I have certain memories of specific records. If you want to calculate those as specific moments,
whatever comes to mind, yeah. So what came first, producing or DJing? It seems like DJing came first.
Absolutely DJing. And for most people who got into producing, DJing is usually the entry point, and producing would be the graduation.
Yeah.
But music first, DJing first and foremost.
So when did producing come into the picture?
Well, I didn't really start getting into the whole idea of producing until I ventured into the realm of wanting to be in a group, which for me, that was the 80s, mid 80s. So going into recording studios, I'm green as a teenager. I'm not really knowing how this whole thing works, but I had a basic understanding of what it took to make a record. And this is during a time where drum machines and synthesizers came into play.
Analog hardware.
I kind of grew past actually as a kid, I always wanted to be in a band. I always
Okay.
wanted to be a drummer
Okay.
in a
That's where I
band.
came from.
Yeah, I think you did. I remember you telling me
Yeah, when
that,
I was
right.
7, yeah.
And the Jackson 5 was a huge influence on me as a kid, but I never got to that point. And
Okay.
I entered in really through hip hop, through the lens of hip hop and groups that I was in and trying to formulate and get signed to labels and what have you. So DJing to production, the 80s, learning how things work, how to program machines, and then eventually, getting my hands on my own gear and
Which you have plenty of now, I see.
Yeah, records. Yeah,
Okay,
for sure.
awesome. So it seems like you were exposed to plenty of different genres and cultures growing up. When or where was your introduction to house music in particular? Do you remember when you first got, it seemed like disco maybe was the first,
Well,
but
you know
when did
what?
house music come in?
I think I need to go back to the question you asked me about moments. And
Sure.
one thing that I didn't bring up, a couple of things that played a major role in my DJ journey. There's a couple of things. Block parties was a big
Okay.
deal in Brooklyn. Experiencing those in my neighborhood, on my own block. Blocks of relatives that I would visit during the summertime. There would be mobile DJs doing their thing outside. So that's one thing. And then also radio, specifically radio stations like 92 KTU back in the days and Kiss FM, 98.7 Kiss FM and WBLS.
I love WBLS.
So, this was during a time where disco and dance music was the main thing. And coming of age. So
Okay.
in 70, 78, 79, 77, 78, 79, that's when I really first experienced like DJing and DJ culture, and the whole idea of taking one record and mixing it into another record and blends and a few of the tricks and trades of that time that were really fascinating to me. Also hearing songs that I may have heard in the house and then hearing how they were manipulated in these mixes, that was huge for me. So those are moments.
Okay, I see.
Right. And then going into the house question, disco, house music is disco's revenge. Right?
Yeah.
So it was another natural progression. A lot of my people that I came up with and hung out with as a teen, many of my friends were a couple years older than me. So they got to experience the club scene before I did. And then I heard all of these stories and, the picture was painted. So by the time I hit the clubs and by the time I started going to I fortunately was able to get into the Paradise Garage as a teenager before they closed. So that alone cemented it.
Could you actually speak more to that? I love asking people who have actually been what it was like, especially like there have just been, from what I understand, people would talk about it. You had to have some like in or membership or whatever, but what was it like when you first went? What did you exactly hear about it? And did it match your expectations?
So for years prior to going, it would be like this, on a summer day, I'm hanging out with the homies. We'll hang out all day, kick it, talk crap, whatever. Some of my friends were DJs. And by 8 o'clock, they'll be like, okay, I'll catch you later because I got to go home and get ready. And I'm like, where you going? Oh, I'm going to the garage. I want to go. Nah, shorty, can't come. Too young. But fortunately for me, because some of them were DJs, I got to experience the music and what was played there beforehand. And also on radio. Again, this was a time where the music was really starting to happen. So I remember hearing specific records on radio, even before it was labeled house, from 80, 84, 85, some of the early, what are considered house classics now. Stuff like Serious Intention, You Don't Know, for example. Another record, No Favors by Intense. These were early renditions of what would become dance and house classics. And I heard these records. So by the time I got to the Paradise Garage, it was like, first of all, it was a dream come true because I heard about it for so many years. Also, like, there's certain records that had the Larry Levan signature stamp
Yeah,
on it.
yeah.
You know, records that he either remixed or produced or released. Don't Make Me Wait by the Peach Boys, huge. I bought the record when it came out, heard it on the radio. So I always had these dreams and a huge fascination of what that space would feel like, sound like. And again, you know, just having friends that had already been going, a few of them were members. And then when I finally got to go, I'm like, wow, this is insane. You know, walking up the ramp, the one thing I was told was don't drink the punch bowl,
Oh,
right? They don't serve alcohol, but stay away from the punch
see,
bowl because it was
yeah.
spiked. And for me, it was also a little intimidating because it was relatively known as a gay club, but I was there for the music, and there were girlies there as well, but I was kind of shy, you know, so I wasn't really dancing
Just observing
with
a
anyone.
little
I was
bit,
more
yeah.
of the observant, listening to the music and just feeling it and taking in the records that Larry Levan played that night. And it impacted me forever. Like once you catch that bug, that's it for you.
Can you speak to more of that like environment outside of the music? Like I've been told that there were just like groups of people doing their own thing. It's like a room of free of judgment. Like, can you kind of speak to like the energy you felt in the room? Like, were people dancing all over the place? You know,
Well,
were there pockets of different communities? Like, what did you observe?
I don't think I paid enough attention to the pockets because I was really overwhelmed by the
Fair
music.
enough.
But I went on a night that was relatively the sexual orientation was mixed, so it wasn't just all male, all female. It was a mixed group of people, and also at that time, the landscape of the club scene was changing, and the Paradise Garage was affected by that as well. So you had people that were probably more into urban music, not necessarily house heads going to the club, street cats or whatever. But this is towards the very, very end. But to answer your question, it just felt like one big musical family. And the thing that I remember the most, besides the sound system, was the response to the music. The reaction, the screams, the hollers, the loudness, the vibrancy. It's something that I think is a little bit lost now.
Okay.
You know? But nothing beats that era. Nothing beats that. That era lasted for a while. But the Paradise Garage was certainly the focal point that had all of these sprouts and expanded into other venues and, you know, across many different DJs and generations and et cetera.
That's funny you speak to that. From others I've spoken to, like Taboo and my dad, they said that there were like particular tracks that would just like set the place on fire. People would like be talking and then they would just like run to the dance floor. It would just explode.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't, I wish I had gone more than 100 times, more than 5 times. But knowing the power of music and knowing how big a lot of these records were already, I understand what that means. And of course, you know, becoming a DJ in that time and playing a lot of those records for that generation of people, for the people that lived it, you're just retelling the story of what happened. So even though you may not have experienced it at that venue, when you're playing those records for that crowd and you get that reaction, I chase that. That's something I always chase.
I saw it a little bit at your last gig. I saw people light up when you played some records, but I think you're still creating some special moments.
Anthems. These are anthems.
Yeah.
Life-changing records.
One thing you briefly mentioned is like you don't see those moments happen as much now anymore. Could you maybe just compare the scene in general? Just maybe think like house, dance music clubs, then and now. Could you compare that energy, that scene, things that you think, I don't know, some pros and cons of each potentially?
Well, I'll start with the pros first.
Yeah. Pros, positive.
The pros are that the music and the energy never dies. The pros also, what I'm seeing is, of course, a newer generation, younger generations getting into the music, trying to live their own version of it, and doing a lot of people doing their due diligence on learning the history, and buying records again, buying vinyl, which I think is kind of important. And communities, communities are a very big deal, because going back to that disco era, communities is really what formed the foundation for these venues to thrive, and people became like family members in these clubs, to the point where when these venues died, people cried. It's like whole memories wiped away. And I see some of that happening now, even though the club scene in New York and in many major cities where there is a scene, the landscape of clubs has changed drastically. A lot of that is due to economics and clubs just not being able to stay erect for very long periods of time because, economics.
Bar sales going down, rent, gentrification,
all kinds of things. But to go into the cons, even though we do have communities, I think what's missing, what I wish could come back to a degree, is how music is felt and how it's absorbed. I think a lot of the reason why, specifically generations maybe of the last 10, 15 years don't feel music the way older generations feel it, has a lot to do with the way music is socialized and experienced, and how people are introduced to it. This is a digital world we live in. There's people that never touched a record, or never
don't know how to put the needle on.
Don't know. Well, no, that, but also don't have that connection with. Well, attention span is a big deal.
Okay.
I was taught some very valuable jewels from David Mancuso of The Loft, rest in peace, years ago, who taught me the value of, personally taught me the value of musicianship and music that's cut to vinyl, and just in general, like how no artist or group goes into a studio to record something with the intent of that song being cut off or played out of context. And of course, for different DJing scenarios, that varies, right? But in the dance space, when a record is made and it has like an intro, a breakdown, choruses, singers singing their hearts out, and the end of a song might be a huge crescendo or something major that happens that brings out all of this emotion in you as a club goer, as a dancer, and your body's reacting to this. With short attention spans and people not being able to withstand a song past 2 or 3 minutes, you lose all of that. And also, when you have a bunch of these records lined up and they're played a certain way and the story is being told, it creates a journey, right? It creates a story. It's a storyline. I think, unfortunately, I'm not seeing too much of that happening on today's dance floor. And it's not even, I can't even say that's limited to the younger generation. I see people who have been doing this for a long time, not really respecting and playing music the way it was meant to be as well. So that's going to affect the dance floor. That's going to affect the party goer and the listenership, because people need to be reprogrammed at this point. Yeah,
what is the solve then? At least like, what can party goers do better, or what can the DJ do better? I know that's a really difficult one, but...
Well, I think the role falls on both sides, because now you have people who have been partying and they don't know what it's like to hear a song in its entirety. They don't have the tolerance for it. And people are not really dancing as well.
That too.
That's another part. But the DJ's role, I know some people might be slighted to hear this, but sometimes you just gotta let these records play. You gotta let them play and let the music, if it's called for, if there's enough nuances in a song or a track to build a vibe, you gotta let that vibe live.
Yeah, I've seen this debate happen a lot because a lot of people's set times are often limited to an hour, and it's hard to, showcase your taste, your style in an hour without cutting every 2 minutes and going somewhere.
Well, that's the other part too, to talk about the pros and cons. I think clubs, promoters, somehow we have to work residencies of one DJ back into the whole landscape of clubbing, because we had a lot of quote unquote churches where you went to a club, you didn't necessarily see the DJ, but you knew who the DJ was that was playing, and you got to feel their soul for 4, 5, 6 hours. And you knew what you were getting. You may not know every record, but you knew the vibe that you were gonna get. And that's totally lost, because a lot of these venues now, they wanna do marathon sets. They wanna have like 3, 4, 5 DJs rocking 1, 2 hour sets. As a DJ, you can't tell your story that way, and you're basically limiting yourself, and which essentially impacts the way you play the records and the music that's being played. If an average song is like 4 or 5 minutes, and you're playing an hour or two, you're not going to be able to play anything, right? So, and I understand, there's again this economics and politics that go into that whole conversation, because a lot of people want to capitalize on the night and rope in the followers of all of these DJs, who a lot of them are now just simply content
promoters.
It's all about content and numbers and how many followers you get. Doesn't necessarily mean you can rock the party, but they're booking them anyway because they're trying to get the people in. And then when you get to the club and people are not really engaged with the music the way they should be, it's more of a scene. And, it's a whole lot of complexities happening, but I think there's always room for a reset and a resurgence of what it used to be. And again, there are some DJs that are trying.
I hope I'm trying a little bit. I see you trying as well.
So when someone comes to one of my events, you're definitely going to get the story, you're going to get the journey, but you're going to get an experience from someone who actually is really in love with the music and really feels the music. And every single record that's played or tune that's played, there's an intent behind it. And when I'm spinning, I'll have one track on, and I'm already 4 or 5 records ahead.
Oh, I see you sorting when people are dancing. Yeah.
I'm 4 or 5 records ahead. Sometimes I will change my mind on what I'm playing next in the last 30 seconds, because in that moment I'm like, no, this is gonna work based on what I'm seeing or feeling from the crowd. So I'm always connected. I'm always connected with...
I see it. I see you crack a smile too when something works, because usually you look real serious, but I see you crack a smile every now and then.
I get excited. I get excited. I'm still going to get excited about a record that I've been playing my entire life, because I understand the power of that track and not only how it makes me feel, but how it makes the audience feels, whether you know it or not, especially if you know it. If it's classic and I know what that record has done or how it may have changed someone's lives, and I play it, I'm confident. There has to be a level of confidence when you do this thing. It's no different from someone who's a singer or drummer or keyboard player or whatever. Like if you know that you're good at what you do, then you're gonna find ways to present yourself in a way that's going to change.
And how do you develop that? Just through experience and time?
I think it's experience and time, but I think some of it has to come from your own confidence, and knowing that you're putting your best foot forward. Anyway, and mind you, I still get nervous sometimes, depending on the event, how big it is. But usually it's that fear or that tension leaves me after the first record or two. because I care that much. That's why.
I don't hear that too often, so I appreciate that. So one thing I've noticed about you in particular is that you seem to connect with a lot of DJs from different generations, which is really refreshing to see and hear. What does that exchange give you personally? Why do you choose to engage with people of all different ages? Like, what does that provide for you?
Well, you know, what's crazy is I don't really think I look at age that much as I do how people generally respond and feel the music.
Mm-hmm.
So no matter how old you are, if I see you playing somewhere and I see you killing it, that's what matters to me the most in how old you are. Because there are people in my age group that are not that good. And there are people in my age group that are great. And I see younger folks coming up who are crushing it. So, but for me, it just, what it does is it gives me hope. You know, I don't want this culture to fade away and just be a footnote in a book or something like that. Like there's too much history and foundation that has been cemented and documented over time. And there's a rich history. There's really like seriously rich history that comes with all of this music and culture, especially in New York, you know, and other places too, but New York has its fair share of stories and connectivity and all of the people that have bonded and formed relationships based around music and records. And, you know, it's crazy. So I would love to see this thing continue. And the only way to really see it flourish for the future is if the next appreciates it and like continues it properly.
As much as you don't see age sometimes, what do you think the different generations of DJs can learn from one another? We often hear that, you know, the older generation can pass down, you know, a lot of the values, the history, the music, but like, I know that it goes both ways. What do you feel each generation has to offer to each other?
Well, for certain, you know, older generations, the experience really and knowledge and the do's and don'ts and, you know, stuff like that. And then for younger folks, you know, there's a lot of stuff to learn as well, especially when it comes to the music that resonates. Because I don't expect someone, you know, that's 20, 30 years younger than me to connect with. And I see that happen. I might play a record or two for someone that's younger than me and they may not necessarily feel it the same way I feel it or people from my age group feel it. But I also understand why, because what I'm realizing more now than ever is, you know, so like I grew up on music that was created before computers, right? Bands, live musicianship, you know, no drum machines, no samplers, no synthesizers, no keyboards. Yeah. A lot of that stuff I still feel, right? So I still implement that in my sets. But someone who may have been born in the mid 90s or early 2000s, that digital world is kind of what they connect with, right? So when you're trying to tap into something that came out in the 70s or early 80s, it may not hit them the same way, but that's because of their palette and how they are, you know, the environment that they're being raised in. So they might connect more with a record from the mid 80s, you know, something more on the electronic side, something more on like, you know, whatever, like boogie records.
Something they're used to or have heard growing up. Yeah,
because that's their era, that's their realm. And that's fine. You know what I mean? Like, I get it. Let's say if I wasn't as open-minded as I am about music, I might not appreciate a record from the 40s or the 50s, right? But my grandparents, who are no longer alive, but I'm just saying, my grandparents, that's their era, you know? And we see it, you know, like when hip hop started coming into the foray, you know, a lot of our parents were like, what the hell is that?
Yeah. I still get it a little bit.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And even with house music, same thing. There are actually people from the garage that have told me, the Paradise Garage, that have told me they loved the music that Larry played more in the 70s and 80s pre-house. And then when house came in, It changed everything, and that
Interesting.
wasn't their favorite.
I've never heard that. Wow.
I have, yeah. Members,
Wow.
people that have
Yeah.
been clubbing since late 70s, early 80s that were members. And when house came in, it was like, I wasn't really checking for the house that much. And I understand it. Like, house can be aggressive, it can be repetitive,
Yeah.
it can be empty. There are tracks that have no vocals on it, right? But for me, when it was coming of age, I was excited. This was like next level, progression in music. So I understand it. So when it comes to like the differences in age group and people's preference, I've learned to be very patient about that and be accepting.
I appreciate that. No judgment. Why do you think it's also important for older generations to share the same dance floor as the younger generation? I saw that quite a bit at your disco party. I saw a lot of younger people coming in, and I was surprised to see that exchange. But why do you think it's important for them to also interact on the dance floor?
I can speak again on my experience.
Yeah.
Like when I first started clubbing, I was partying with people that were 5 to 10 years older than me. A little intimidating at first, but when music is the common denominator and everybody's responding and reacting to great tracks, it brings the dance floor together. And that's really what it's about. It's about unity. Music is a universal language, and it's supposed to bring everybody together. Going back to the Loft, David Mancuso's party had kids running around. Parents, kids, because there was no alcohol. It was a safe space for families to gather, and it was all about the music.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, it's all about bringing people together. That's what music is supposed to do.
That's beautiful. And you kind of spoken to the fact that you hung out with people a lot older than you, and they introduced you to music, culture, expectations of nightlife. Can you speak to how community helped you evolve as an artist and a DJ?
Community is everything to me. It's what keeps me grounded. I've traveled the world and I've done all kinds of gigs, big parties, small parties. But community basically lets me know that you have a grounding to come home to. So at the end of the day, let's say, hypothetically, the world shuts down again and I have to rock here in New York, can't travel. I know that I have a home base and people that we have cultivated this huge synergy with over decades that count on me, I count on them, and they'll show up for you. And I think every DJ really should have that kind of grounding. Every artist really should have that kind of grounding and connectivity to your core fan base. I think most legendary nights and parties that have happened in New York and other places could not have happened without some kind of community, some kind of foundation, where, again, relationships are formed and there's people that you see like on the dance floor every single time you go, and that's how great experiences happen.
And how do you create that community or sense of community in this digital age where everyone is, again, swiping past flyers, looking for the next move, listening to songs, rapid fire? How do you cultivate that or hold on to that sense of community?
It's challenging. I've been having these conversations quite a bit often, mainly because social media seems to be the target for most people trying to throw events and parties and what have you. But I feel like with some regard, we need to get back to the analog world when it comes to connecting. So literally getting people to put their emails down on a piece of paper and recording that.
Like at Cosmic Arts, they have their newsletter sheet.
When my wife and I started throwing parties years ago, when we first started, we literally would buy postcards.
Wow.
And we had a mailing list and we would lick stamps and put those cards in the mail. And then of course we had people handing out flyers, like stacks of flyers and postcards or whatever. We would hit the venues and, give these things out to people, like hand to hand, more connection, more personal
you
exchange.
feel almost obligated to go at that point because it's such a personal invite.
Yeah, because, when you have a bunch of emails coming at you or even social media feeds, there's too much information and we get, some people are hypersensitive to that kind of stuff. They disconnect. or they just ignore. After a while, it's like, too much. So it's always best when you establish like a personal connection.
Do you think there's still room and space for that? Do you still
There's always
often send personal invites and whatnot?
Always, because people need each other. People need real connection. That's never going to go away. No matter how much, no matter how much people like get like super entranced with the digital world, and sometimes we need to have that simple human connection just to keep us stable.
I appreciate that. Yeah, every time anyone has ever invited me or like even just sent a text message, it felt a lot more special than just sending a link or adding me to an email list or something of that nature. Can you describe what exactly the SpinnaVerse is to you and where that concept came from?
Wow. So conceptually, sonically, my whole world has thrived on the concept of the galaxy and outer world ventures and the galactic sound and what have you, beyond real, all of that stuff. So I got this space as an extension for my collection, my record collection. And
you can see,
and my recording studio, with the intention of like gathering and having people come here to exchange ideas, get creative, whether it's recording or actually having events, whether it's interviews like this, photo shoots, galleries, film screenings, panel discussions, podcasting, and, events, definitely trying to have some private events here, parties and what have you. And just hanging out. I kind of miss the idea of having like-minded folk come through and just kick it, chop it up about music, everything, really, life, whatever it is. This is about community. That's what this space is
kind of
for.
lost. I mean, there's still coffee shops and some third spaces popping up, but I can't say there are a lot of places top of mind where you can just kind of kick it, chop it up outside of like happy hour situation before the night starts.
And, also mentorship at some point, that's in the short-term goal, to have some kind of programming here for that as well, to teach the next generation of music lovers and aspiring musicians and DJs and what have you. All that stuff is in the plans.
And that the galactic sound in particular, how has that shaped your approach to production or DJing? Can you speak to that a little bit? I can hear it a little bit now that you've said it to me, but can you speak to that a little?
Well, so I loved early electronic music. Obviously Kraftwerk was huge.
I saw that on the wall over there.
Yeah, big influence on me. Not just the Trans Europe Express album, but Music Nonstop and the Tour de France and all that stuff. I've been getting into Ryuichi Sakamoto stuff over the years, Yellow Magic Orchestra. And in my production sound, when I started sampling and really progressing with my sound for hip hop specifically, I was really kind of like enamored with spacey records, like electronic records, experimental records, classical records that were created with synthesizers, Moog recordings, that kind of stuff. So I brought all of those sounds into my production. Then when I started getting into house, I just kind of transferred the sonics to the house production. Working with musicians who are trained in jazz and R&B, but have the chops to also experiment with me. But yeah, I'm spacey, naturally a spacey dude. I'm an Aquarian.
Okay. I see it. What does it mean to you to still be a part of this culture?
It's my life. This is the air I breathe. Music is the air that I breathe. It's saved my life many times. It's what keeps me sane, and it's just part of who I am. So everything that I do is really self-defining at this point. It's just who I am.
And what do you think we as, DJs, promoters, artists can do to preserve the culture now? You've kind of hinted at some things earlier, but what do you think are the most important things we need to keep in mind to keep this culture alive?
Keep spreading love. Keep on dancing. Don't put everything on social media.
Fair enough.
Some things need to be preserved. But teach. Learn the history. Teach the history. Don't forget about the forefathers, the four sisters, the people who have laid the foundation. That's always going to be important. So the narrative can continue. The journey can continue. And just, again, spreading love is so important because this music is really rooted in that. There's no room for anything else but that.
Because we know that the scene is ever evolving, but what do you think are some of the mainstays, the staples that you want to carry forward?
Well, I think one of the main things for me is understanding how powerful music is and not to neglect that power. Because this music can this music brings out so much emotion out of people. I can't tell you how many times people have come up to me after a gig and they'll tell me, I don't know what it is about how you play, but I had a really rough week. This just happened to me this past weekend, after my gig on the West Coast. A woman came up to me and said, I didn't really hear you play before. A friend told me to come out. And I had back-to-back scenarios this week. It was really rough, and something about the way you played healed me. And I think that healing can only happen if the person who's doing the healing understands how important music is, and trying to weave these songs together, or the tracks that you're playing, to bring emotions out of people. I think that's the main thing that needs to be transferred, because it's something that I feel a lot of DJs neglect. We want to have fun. We want to play records. Some of us are self-aggrandizing when it comes to the approach, but it's always going to be about the dance floor and the people. Yeah, you can play for yourself too, but you got to keep the dance floor in mind. You got to understand how these records work, how to put them together and tell the story. And I think that's the takeaway from all of this, because I learned from the best, from observing the best. So I'm just trying to be the best me in that realm. And I think anyone else that's doing it, it's not about how famous you are or how much money you got or how many followers you have. None of that matters. It's all about the music first. Always gonna be that.
That's great to hear. I think as long as people like you keep showing us the way, it'll happen. So maybe when you started attending the garage, can you maybe name one track that was a real culture shifter, one that was one of those first explosive ones that you had heard of, even if it was before you had the chance to step in the doors?
It's a good question. I am going to go with Serious Intention, You Don't Know, because that was one of the hottest tracks out. Actually, by the time I got to the Paradise Garage, it was already a few years old, but that record was certainly life-changing.
I'm gonna listen to it right after this.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything that you wanna share that kind of came to mind as I was asking these questions? Anything that about you, the culture, the scene?
I want to credit my dad as well, because as far as house music goes, although he house never landed on his palate, but disco did, and he took me record shopping as early as 6 years old. And one of the records I remember, I always tell the story, but one of the records I remember getting off the wall was a jam called Dreaming a Dream by Crown Heights Affair, which is pretty much a disco staple at this point. And it's another one of those records that I still play till this day, and it's changed my life. But he planted the seed. I can't say that he necessarily cared for me being a DJ.
Fair enough.
Because in his eyes, he didn't see that as a real job. Maybe not till the end of his life, he realized that I was doing okay with it. But for most of my life, he didn't understand how I could do that, how I could live off of playing records. Yeah. But he planted the seed, so it's his fault.
Yeah, and here you are with a ginormous collection in a space of your own. So